Hey party people, and welcome back to another Nerds in Squares small talk mini podcast type of episode here. I'm Captain Zeus, the host with the most, and this here is Lucky joining me here on BP Fun, and today we're going to be talking about DC a little bit more, because, you know, we love DC comics and Marvel and all that stuff, but DC's come out with some really juicy news lately that we definitely decided to go over, especially with Creature Commandos coming out. So like and subscribe for more content like this, and let us know in the comments below your thoughts on the stuff we're going to go over here. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and discuss is the fact that James Gunn said that we have multiple rated R DC projects being developed right now. Now, obviously he said whatever is worthy of the story, that's what we're gonna do. And it definitely seems like they're not going the House of Mouse route where everything's PG-13, because we already have the Swamp Thing James Mangold movie. Gosh, struggled saying that. That one's gonna be rated R, and I think it's the first rated R project in the first chapter of the DCU outside of Creature Commandos, which looks to be TVMA. So obviously, you know, he's not going to shy away from things getting pretty mature, and considering the DC being a darker and more gritty universe than, say, Marvel in a lot of different aspects, it makes sense that you're going to have multiple adult rated projects for DC, and I think that's freaking fantastic. I'm excited for the fact that we have multiple being developed, so that makes me wonder what else is going to be made. What is coming out that we don't know of in the first chapter of the DCU? I kind of hope Lanterns is rated R or TVMA, to be honest, because we talked about it in our first episode of the mini podcast series here, that, you know, a Lanterns series basically like True Detective on HBO would be freaking fantastic to watch. There's a lot of potential there that you could do and not make it super, I guess, Marvel-y, you know, where it's comedy like 90% of the time. But Lucky, what do you think? What kind of projects would you want to see be rated R in the DCU?
The first thing that comes to mind is I would love Constantine. Adaptation, maybe as a Tana, as like a rated R type of vibe. And the reason being is because even like the Etrigan, the demon, I would love to see something like that, because to your point, DC is dark, and I feel like for the most part DC in the past has limited themselves to a PG-13 type rating, and it's because they're in direct competition with Marvel. But I think that it would actually do better if they had more rated M, rated R, TVMA, you know, type projects, because for the most part, yes, Superman is going to be PG-13, right? Supergirl, probably PG-13. These things are kind of shoo-ins, but I love the fact that they're expanding on this so quickly. Because when we take a look, and I hate to make the comparison, but unfortunately I kind of do in this regard, but when you look at Marvel, and you look at what Marvel has done over the past several years, they've made everything PG-13, as about family-friendly as possible when you make these big budget movies. Up until Deadpool and Wolverine, that was the first time that they dipped their toes into the rated R type of spectrum. And for me, the whole Blade delay and things like that, it still doesn't feel like they're on it. You know what I mean? It still doesn't feel like they're necessarily bought in outside of a select thing being rated R. Whereas DC is embracing that in this way, and they're saying right out the gate, Swamp Thing. Boom, we're gonna make this. You know, we're going to dive into the actual story of DC, and a lot of these stories are darker than Marvel. That is kind of what differentiates the Marvel from the DC, is oftentimes the dark aesthetic of many DC characters and their stories. A guy like Constantine, he is an alcoholic. He is suffering with all sorts of different types of issues, mental issues, and that's something that I feel like James Gunn is going to be able to attack in a way where if you make things rated R, you'll be able to actually dig deep on these issues and give a very thought-provoking story, instead of simplifying it to, yeah, Tony Stark is a billionaire and he does sometimes drink a little bit, but like Tony Stark is an alcoholic. Like, people don't, you know what I mean? Tony Stark had a lot of issues in the comics and has a lot of issues in the comics that they didn't really touch on with RDJ, and that's not dissing what they did, but that's a core element of a lot of these types of characters is their trauma. I feel like they'll be able to express that more openly and freely, and it's going to be very fruitful for the fans to be able to dig in on this and be like, this is Constantine, this is who he is. You can dislike his character, you might love his character, or Swamp Thing. You know, we're going to dive into that horror element of Swamp Thing, and we're going to show you who he is and the way he operates. We're not just going to make it big green guy that lives in the swamp saves day. We're going to make it a little creepy. We're going to make it a little edgy, and we're going to see what the response from the fans is. And I really think that it's going to be out of this world.
I'm excited for the upcoming projects. I feel like, while I was listening to you talk, I think The Authority is another one that would be rated R, considering that's a film of a group of heroes, or not even heroes, but a group of powered individuals who will do whatever it takes for the good of humanity, whether it's killing politicians or, otherwise. Like, I think that's something they could definitely do the rated R route, considering how it would be a nice change of pace from seeing the Justice League all the time on the screen. Last time we saw the Justice League, we had to come out with the Snyder cut because the original wasn't that good. I guess it's the Whedon cut, if you will, technically not even the original, but you get the point. So I'm excited for the fact that we're having multiple rated R projects in development. Now, one thing that I do also want to touch on is part of DCU Canon. We're talking about this first chapter, Creature Commandos, coming out pretty soon here, and then we're going to be having the Superman movie coming out next year, and that's going to be exciting. As you mentioned, the Supergirl movie that's going to be coming out, probably PG-13, that one's going to be coming out in June 26th in 2026, and the Lantern series will be coming out around the same time as the Supergirl or the Supergirl film. So that'd be cool if we get, again, a TVMA Lantern show as well as a PG-13 Supergirl movie around the same time. I think that's a great way to complement each other for the DCU. In terms of DCU canon, James Gunn came out to say that all of Peacemaker season 1 is canon in the DCU, except for the Justice League appearance, which he said they're going to kind of deal with that in the next season, or in the season that's coming up here soon. I know a lot of people are speculating as to what else is DCU canon. It has been revealed that the Suicide Squad movie, the one he's worked on, that one's also DCU canon. We have Blue Beetle. That movie is also DCU canon, with him getting an animated series that takes place after the movie, with everyone reprising their roles. And then we'll have a live action movie that takes place after the series eventually. But I mean, I love how the projects he's worked on in the DCEU are canon in the DCU, which shows that, the seeds were, I suppose, unintentionally being planted there. The way canon is being reworked due to, whatever's happening behind the scenes, however the script is coming out, I think is awesome. I loved Peacemaker. I'm excited for season 2 because it looks freaking phenomenal. We're gonna see James Grillo's Rick Flag Sr. in the show, the same one from Creature Commandos. He's gonna be in there, and everyone else is reprising their roles from the first season as well. So I think seeing Vigilante again is gonna be funny, but I think having Peacemaker season 1 canon makes sense instead of just having season 2 be canon.
Yeah, I agree, Zeus. I think a lot of it, the seeds were planted. The evolution of this whole thing is one that should be studied. And the biggest reason why is because he was able to make Suicide Squad several years ago. He wasn't a part of the DCU the way he is now at that time, but the way he told the story and the way that he was able to kind of work into things makes it to where it's seamless. Right? There's not a whole lot. Same with Peacemaker. Outside of the very last scene of that show, that is canon. You know what I mean? That is all canon. And the only reason why the last scene isn't is because obviously James Gunn is now in charge, and that's the Zack Snyder JL. That's kind of, obviously that's going to be reworked and everything. That's understandable, and it's just silhouettes of characters. It's not like he introduced you to Henry Cavill Superman in episode 3. It was just now it's David Cornsweat.
Well, we saw Ezra Miller's Flash and Jason Momoa's Aquaman, so we did see them. I feel like what they might do is they might have that exact scene in a flashback and either recast or just have, like you said, the silhouettes of those characters there, and not actually show them, to show that it is, but it isn't canon.
Right, and he's done just a good job of kind of operating under the understanding of, a lot of things are changing, and the amount of thought that it takes to go into a lot of these shows. Let me just say too, Vigilante is one of my favorite written characters so far from James Gunn.
Same.
Absolutely think he's hilarious. John Cena as Peacemaker is about as good as you can get. A lot of these things, just the pace in which he's moving is fast, but it's also not rushed. And there's a very distinct difference between the two. You can tell when projects are being rushed or when these processes are being rushed by the product being put out. But every time that a project comes out from James Gunn, like Peacemaker Season 1, like the Suicide Squad, which did so much better than the other Suicide Squad, just everything that he's kind of put into this, you can tell that this has been lingering for a while. And even though he might be moving at a certain pace, does not necessarily mean that this is a rush thing. It's clear that he's put a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of thought into his approach, from the Creature Commandos being a few months before when Superman takes place. And these are all very intentional decisions that he's making. So it will be interesting to see how he continues to go through it and build this universe in a unique way. And I mean, I'm thrilled about it. I love the fact that Peacemaker Season 1 is canon. And I love the fact that we get more of that character, because I think that the series makes so much sense for Peacemaker. And, you know, he doesn't necessarily have to be in movies like that, but I think the series itself is absolutely fantastic. The callback in Season 1 to like Batman, I thought was hilarious. And it's cool little things that he's dropping these ideas, or he's kind of planting seeds, like you said, with a very delicate nature in which he's done it. Yes, he is a part of this bigger universe, you know, Peacemaker is, but at the same time, we're operating under, at that time, a very strenuous, you know, circumstance and everything like that. But the way that he's been able to delicately kind of piece this thing together, I mean, kudos to the guy. You know, that was a job for a very long time that I did not envy people who had that, because of the mess that DC was and the mess that Warner Brothers was kind of giving them. Kudos to him, and kudos to that entire team that he has, because that was not an easy job, and it's still not an easy job. There's still tons of work to do and tons of cool things to see, but we're on the right track, and I think that's what's going to be such a treat to fans.
And I think the fact that Peacemaker being that TVMA series gives hope for future TVMA series, or, you know, rated R projects under James Gunn's tutelage, because like Peacemaker was so good. Like, yeah, it was TVMA for a variety of reasons, but it wasn't over the top. There wasn't a ton of unnecessary scenes. It was funny, it was mature, but it was overall a really good show. And I think the fact that him doing these DC projects, not even trying to take over, you know, as the head of DC, but still making Peacemaker after the success of Suicide Squad, and then have the tie-ins between those two projects and the rest of the Snyderverse. And then with him coming into the leadership of DC, now he's like, well, those were successful. I want to bring that success over to DC. And, you know, it's one thing to completely scrap the Snyderverse, which, to be fair, I would as well if I was in his position, if that's what Warner Brothers was wanting. But he also took what was successful, took what had potential, and brought it in, which helped also mold the fact that we're coming into an existing universe, you know, because we have Creature Commandos with Rick Flag Sr. He's going to be dealing with the fact that Junior was killed, and that happened in the Suicide Squad movie. We're going to be seeing Peacemaker in the show. I'm sure we'll see the flashback in some way or form be different and somehow fit into the DCU canon like it did in Season 1 with the Justice League flashback. And the fact that they're bringing in characters from the Snyderverse over is also cool. So that shows that although it's a reboot and a lot of people are recasted, you know, we're going to be seeing familiar faces. Like, I'm sure we're going to see Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn in there. I'm sure we're going to be seeing Zachary Levi Shazam in there, probably. A lot of great potential for the DCU and going forward, because again, it's an established universe, and that's one thing that I like, is we don't need to see origin stories consistently. Now, for brand new types of universes that we've never been a part of, that's one thing. But for DC and Marvel, which is someone who's had their origins of every character of their entire universe, in fact, be rebooted several times, you don't need to start over again from day one in a cinematic universe. You just go right in And if it's a character people aren't familiar with, that's when you start to do some kind of origin with. Like with Creature Commandos, we're going to be seeing, I'm sure vaguely, the origins of each one of the members of the squad there, or how they got to where they are. And I think that's just awesome. I think that's one thing I'm excited for, is the fact that depending on the story depends on the rating, and depending on the story depends on where it stands timeline-wise in the DCU.
Well, and also, Zeus, to your point, right? The origin story point. I do want to touch on this really quick. A big part of the way that I view this universe is kind of like, for characters that we've never met before, absolutely a little bit of origin here, a little bit of origin there makes sense, right? We sprinkle some of that in. But the big point too is, for a lot of characters that we might not know, we also can introduce them in a way that isn't necessarily an origin story. And then if you as a fan enjoy this character, think it's cool, you can go and do research on this character. You can take it and you're going to see them in other projects that might continue to dive deep. A lot of people loved Guardians of the Galaxy, including me. We didn't get a full origin story of every character in the first movie. Throughout the films, we learned more about them. And fans started to say, let me do a deep dive on Drax. Let me do a dive on Rocket. You know, let me figure this out. Because as a fan, you're going to gravitate to characters the way that you gravitate to characters. Some of them you might not love. Some of them you're going to fall in love with that you never thought you'd be a fan of this character until, boom, it pulls you in. And at that point, there's a freedom to what he's kind of doing, where he's not shoving all this exposition down your throat, or like, this guy's this guy's this girl's this, you know what I mean? You get to experience these characters in a manner like Guardians of the Galaxy. And if you enjoy these types of characters, you're more than welcome to deep dive. You're gonna see them in other projects. To your point, the Rick Flag Sr. People might love Rick Flag Sr. in the Creature Commandos, and then boom, he's in Peacemaker season 2. And now all of a sudden, you know,
and
it's
Superman.
like, now I know more about Rick Flag Sr. Now that's somebody that I gravitate towards, and I like that character. It's going to be seamless, is the way that it kind of feels. And also, to your point, the TVMA ratings for Peacemaker season 1 and stuff, those are huge, because even though Peacemaker was TVMA and Suicide Squad, I believe, was rated R, wasn't it?
Yes.
Even though those were mature ratings, you can see how interchangeable that universe that he's developing is, right? Like, you could see a character in Peacemaker's world that is a PG-13 character, and you can see this thing kind of blend seamlessly, where it's like, if we want to tell a story on this planet right here, it doesn't have to just be rated R. We're not going down any which rabbit hole. We're not going to try and put ourselves in a pretzel. We're going to have seamlessness to this, and you know, we're going to show the dark sides of this place. We're also going to show the hope and the love and the characters like Superman, and like, you can feel throughout those shows in the movie that he knows what he's doing, man. And it doesn't feel like he's pigeonholing himself into any which way. He's just going to let those characters be their authentic selves, and that's what I'm super excited for.
I'll say this to wrap things up here. I am excited for the DCU. At the same time, I'm concerned. You know, it's something to be wary of when you have the first projects of an expansive universe that has a plan laid out, casting already underway, plan for where things can go, more or less. First things first is Creature Commandos. After that, you know, we got Superman, and then Peacemaker season 2. And then we also have Supergirl and Lanterns later on, but those are some of the first projects we'll be seeing. So how they turn out is a possible indicator of how the DCU will be. And as talented as James Gunn is, you know, he is all over these first few projects: Creature Commandos, Peacemaker season 2, Superman. Like, he is all over them. So as long as these turn out good, then I think we're going to be in good hands. I do think Max needs to they need to organize their app. There's no organization on that app anymore. There used to be, especially when it came to like DC. Like, they had things sorted out with timeline, animated universe, all the other stuff that's not in between. And now it's just wherever. Not even all DC stuff is on Max. So I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, if it's on Max, let's sort it out through which universe is what, Elseworlds, DCU, DCAU, and then let's have everything else fill in. Like, it's not hard, but I digress. That's irrelevant. But anyways, what did you guys think? What do you guys think of rated R projects coming into the DCU? Multiple of them being developed. What would you like to see be developed as a rated R project? Let us know in the comments below. I'm Captain Zeus. That there is Lucky, and we will see you guys in the next one. See you.